DiscipleMakingStages.com, or go to the App Store, DiscipleMaker Stages, and download it. I encourage you to go to one of them because we're going to look at a training article about that. Stages has 4 different rings: curious, believer, disciple, disciple maker, and in each one there you'll find head, heart, and hands articles, essential articles for you to do, things to know, things to feel, and things to do. I'd encourage you to look through the different stages, get familiar with them. In each stage there are additional helps as well, dozens of them, and so you have many resources if you're going to be discipling a person. For this episode, we'll be in the 4th stage, the Disciple Maker stage, and so I'll ask you the question: what's the indicator of being a disciple? It's not books we've read or written, it's not podcasts we've listened to, or seminars, or videos that I do or you watch. I'm really glad you're watching this, but actually the indicator of being a disciple maker is stories. Messy stories, we could say. You know, if you're processing this, you want to think, you know, the elders in my church. Are you an elder or a deacon or a Sunday school teacher or the worship leader or the best bass in the band or something like that? The real question we have to ask is, where are your disciples? I think that's what Jesus is going to ask when we step into heaven. Paul, where are your disciples? And so you need to get into stories of people, curious people, believers, disciples. And they're going to be messy stories because that's the way we come to God. The study we want to look at is Embracing Messy Lives. You can stop the video right here and go to the website or the app. Look under Disciple Maker, Things to Feel, the Heart, and find the one, Embracing Messy Lives. We're going to work our way through that training article. You might want to do this on your own. Maybe you're training someone to be a disciple maker, or maybe you have a friend and you say, we want to learn together. I'd really encourage you to find someone to do it with. Get an image in your mind as you go through this training article. The Prodigal Son. In the article is a picture of Rembrandt's famous Prodigal Son painting. The father is there, the younger son at his feet, kneeling, and the elder brother standing to the side, contemptuous, arrogant. Those are the characters in that most famous of Jesus' stories. This is a great image for us to have as we step into the study, Embracing Messy Lives. Rembrandt, by the way, painted himself into that. Do you know which one he is? No, not the older brother. No, not the father. He put his image, his face, on the younger son, the prodigal son, which is a great insight for him and for us to say, when we come to God, all of us are messy. I think as you become a disciple maker, you start right here to say, God discipled me. God encountered me and impacted my life when I was messy. You know, we're messy in vocabulary, messy in thoughts, messy in habits, messy in lifestyle, messy in relationships. And the people you're going to work with are going to be like that. And so you start by saying, Lord, I'm a mess. And when I came to you, like Paul says in Romans 7, in my flesh dwells no good thing. Part of our preparation to be a disciple maker is to be humbled by how God had to wade into our mess to help us. There's 2 responses to the prodigal son in that story. You know them. The father runs and embraces his son, and the older brother has contempt for him. If you've ever driven past a pig farm or lived downwind from one, maybe you can understand some of the revulsion the father had to push through to love this boy, to show compassion, to see the movement of God in his life, and to join that. Whereas the elder brother, he disses his father. He says, that son of yours, He has contempt for his brother. He says he's wasted his money on prostitutes. He doesn't know that. That's just his attitude. That's what he's thought about his brother. So on a scale of 1 to 10, elder brother to compassionate father, contempt to compassion, where would you put yourself as you are being a disciple maker? And maybe you could ask the question, a year ago, where was I? And which direction am I moving? Elder brothers don't disciple. Compassionate fathers are the ones that disciple. The elder brother syndrome. Tim Keller has a book, The Prodigal God, and in it he says he started the church Redeemer in New York City, assuming they would reach the unchurched and seekers, but he said they reached many people who had been savaged in churches. And he says this, in churches and religious institutions, often they are so unpleasant, they are filled with elder brothers. You don't want to be an elder brother. You don't want to have contempt. You want to have compassion and wade into messy, broken lives like you are, like I am. That's what a disciple maker does. If you'd asked me before we had our first of 4 children, Paul, will you be changing diapers? I would have laughed and said, my father never changed diapers. Why would I? Well, I became a professional diaper changer. And if you're going to be a disciple maker, you're going to be a spiritual, messy diaper changer, because people have messy lives like that. 1 Peter 4 says, love covers a multitude of sins. That's what a disciple maker thinks. Paul in 1 Corinthians 6, Paul was the Pharisee of the Pharisees. Gentiles were dogs and scum to him, but he embraced messy lives, and he lists all sorts of sins, cheats and drunks and male prostitutes and idolaters and adulterers. And then he says, and such were some of you. He knew from experience what it's like to embrace messy lives. But most of all, what makes us feel and touches our heart is the life of Jesus. You just pick a story of his. Most of the time, he is relating to messy, broken lives. Samaritan woman, she's had a troop of husbands, and she's hooked up with another guy, and Jesus spends time talking and bringing her to faith. Have you ever encountered a naked guy running around in a cemetery? No, I haven't either, but Jesus did. And by the time Jesus was done, that man was sitting at his feet, clothed in his right mind, but that's not how Jesus started when he encountered him. Well, these are messy lives. And the greatest and most impacting of all is Jesus became a mess for us. Someone said when Jesus was hanging on the cross, he would be almost unrecognizable as a human being. He'd been whipped and bloodied. On the cross, his body would be bloated. He hangs arms open to us. He's naked. He is shattered. He is a bloody mess, we could say it. Why? Because his compassion said, I will take your mess on me so you can be whole and healthy, and then join me in reaching messy lives. 1 Peter says he rescued us, ransomed us from an empty way of living. How did he do it? By his precious blood. A bloody mess, so that you and I can be disciple makers, caring for messy lives. Embrace messy lives. One of my heroes is Catherine Booth. Her husband was William Booth, General Booth. Together they started the Salvation Army during Victorian England, and they dared to go into the slums and bring the gospel to the broken, messy lives of that day. They were vilified. He was a pastor. He was kicked out of his church. His convention kicked him out. But they thought, Jesus loves messy lives. General Booth suffered from depression. Pastors can do that. And sometimes it was so debilitating he just couldn't function. And so she took over. She raised, I think, 8 children. But she also spoke on his behalf. And I listened to Jim Cymbala. He was talking about this in the sermon. And he said, go read a sermon of hers. It will put you on your knees. So I did. I Googled and read and was just sobered by her heart for God and her heart for the brokenness, the ruined lives, the messy, messy lives that they dealt with in the Salvation Army. There's a story told of a sophisticated society woman walking on the sidewalk and seeing Catherine Booth in the gutter with a prostitute, a drunken woman. And that society woman sniffed and said, "You couldn't pay me £1 million to do that." And Catherine responded, "You couldn't pay me £1 million to do this either." Do you want to have a lot of people at your funeral? What a strange question. Catherine Booth, they estimate, had 38,000 people at her funeral. Embrace messy lives. That's discipling life on